60 seconds with Dakara.
Alright, what's your hometown? Where you from?
Maryland.
Alright, where's your birthday?
August 8th.
Alright, what's your favorite color?
Pink.
Okay, what's your dream occupation?
Real estate.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Mean people.
I don't like mean people either. What's your favorite artist?
I just simply want my daughter back.
Seeing your daughter vanish into thin air. The phone calls going unanswered, the texts left unread, the nights spent staring at the front door hoping she will walk through it. 2 weeks of searching, begging, pleading with strangers to share her photo, every hour feeling like a lifetime, every sound outside making your heart jump, praying endlessly for her safe return. Then the knock comes at the door, the kind of knock that chills a parent to the bone. Officers standing there, their faces heavy with the weight of what they are about to say. Your child is gone. Your 19-year-old daughter, Dacara Thompson, once full of laughter, dreams, and light, now confirmed dead, her body found after vanishing without a trace. The hope you clung to shattered in a single sentence. The future you imagined for her erased in one cruel moment. And as you struggle to comprehend the unthinkable, police reveal a name. Hugo Mendez, the man now accused of stealing her life. My God, how does a family ever recover from such horror? How does a community process such senseless loss? This is the devastating story of Dacara Thompson. Please subscribe to our channel. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps stories like this alive and ensures that the voices of victims are never forgotten. Now let's go back to the story in Prince George's County, Maryland. What began as a missing persons case quickly spiraled into a tragedy no one could have imagined. On a quiet day in August 2025, 19-year-old Dacara Thompson vanished without explanation. Friends and family sounded the alarm when she didn't return home. 2 weeks later, the search ended in heartbreak when investigators confirmed her body had been found. The shock only deepened when authorities named her alleged killer, Hugo Mendez, a man now facing murder charges. But how did a young woman with her whole life ahead of her end up the victim of such a horrific crime, and what chain of events led to this devastating outcome? Dacara Thompson was only 19 years old, but in those short years she managed to leave an impression on everyone who crossed her path. She was described as the kind of young woman who could walk into a room and change the entire atmosphere. Her smile was warm, her laugh infectious, and her energy carried a quiet strength that made people feel safe and seen. Born and raised in Prince George's County, Dacara grew up surrounded by family who adored her and friends who quickly became extended relatives. Teachers recalled her as a bright student, someone who asked thoughtful questions, who didn't just memorize information but truly wanted to understand it. She was ambitious, driven by dreams bigger than the small neighborhood she called home, and yet she never forgot where she came from. Dakara was known for lending a helping hand, whether it was tutoring classmates who struggled, babysitting cousins so their parents could work, or volunteering for community events. She had a way of stepping into responsibility far beyond her years. At the same time, she still carried the innocence of youth, loved taking selfies with friends, posting upbeat captions on social media, sharing her favorite songs, and dreaming out loud about what her life could be. Her friends would later recall how she talked endlessly about her future, whether it was continuing her studies, building a career, or one day starting her own business. She wanted to make something of herself, not just for her, but for her family. She often said that one day she wanted to buy her mother a house. That was the kind of determination that pushed her. She believed that life wasn't just about surviving, it was about leaving a mark, about building something meaningful. Dakara had so much hope in her heart and so much belief that her future was wide open. She loved music and fashion, often experimenting with hairstyles, clothes, and makeup. Her Instagram reflected a young woman who enjoyed showing her personality through colors and creativity. She wasn't afraid of being herself. She wasn't shy about her style, and she loved encouraging her friends to embrace who they were too. Her captions were often short, playful, and filled with positivity. They captured not just how she looked, but who she was. Family meant everything to her. She was a daughter, a sister, a cousin, and a friend who took each role seriously. She never missed a birthday call, never ignored a cry for help, and never let those she loved feel unimportant. To her younger cousins, she was more than family. She was a role model, someone they wanted to grow up and be like. To her close friends, she was the safe place, the one they called when life felt too heavy. 19 years old, just stepping into adulthood, Dakara was at that delicate moment where childhood dreams begin to collide with real-world possibilities. She had dreams, she had plans, and she had time. Or at least she should have had time, because the heartbreaking truth is that Dacara Thompson never got to see those dreams come to life. Her story ended far too soon, not because she chose it, but because someone else made that decision for her. And that is what makes her story not just tragic but unbearable. Though only 19, Dakara was already carving out a path for herself. She wasn't content with simply drifting through life. She wanted to build something of her own. Friends say she often spoke about her plans, about how she wanted to continue her education, pursue a stable career, and eventually open a business that could both provide for her and allow her to give back to her community. She was inspired by young women she saw online who turned their talents into successful brands, and she carried that same spark inside her, a vision of creating a life bigger than her circumstances. She was determined not to just work a job, but to build a future. Those closest to her knew she was a hard worker. She would take on extra shifts, save money, and set small goals for herself. Sometimes it was as simple as buying something nice with her own paycheck. Other times it was about helping her family with bills. Dakara was not afraid of responsibility. She believed in working now to enjoy later. She believed in laying a foundation so she could stand tall in years to come. She had a practical mindset, but also a dreamer's heart. Her online presence showed hints of this ambition. The posts she shared weren't just about fun, but also about personal growth, about staying strong, about never giving up. She encouraged her peers to keep going. Even when life felt hard, she knew what it meant to struggle, and that gave her a maturity well beyond her years. She wanted to be proof that your beginnings didn't have to define your ending. Friends remember her often talking about how she wanted to one day inspire younger girls, especially those who felt overlooked or underestimated. She wanted to show them that success was possible, that you could rise above challenges, that you could dream and achieve. She didn't just think of herself, she thought of the legacy she wanted to leave behind. Now, in the cruelest twist, her family and community are the ones left to carry her dreams forward. While she didn't get the chance to build her business or see her long-term goals realized, Dakara's name is now spoken with love, with pride, and with remembrance. Her story has already become a symbol, a reminder of how bright potential can be stolen too soon. Friends speak of her as someone who will never be forgotten, someone whose energy and determination live on in their memories. Her legacy is not measured in years lived or milestones reached, but in the impact she had on hearts, in the love she gave, and in the inspiration she left behind. Dakara's personal life reflected the same warmth and sincerity that defined her character. She was deeply rooted in her family, a daughter who brought joy into the home, a sister who offered laughter and support, and a friend who could be counted on in moments both big and small. Those who loved her describe her as the glue that often kept bonds strong, the one who remembered birthdays, checked in with late-night calls, and always made sure her presence was felt. She believed family wasn't just about blood, but about loyalty and consistency. Her circle of friends say she was the type who would drop everything to listen when someone was hurting. She gave honest advice, but in a way that was kind and uplifting. She knew how to make people laugh, even when the weight of life felt heavy, and she had a way of making everyone around her feel seen. Dakara didn't crave the spotlight. She craved connection. She valued trust, and she guarded her relationships carefully. Those close to her say she never tolerated dishonesty, but she was quick to forgive and to give second chances. A sign of her tender heart in her romantic life, Dakara was described as loving, yet cautious. She wasn't the kind of young woman easily swept away by words. She looked for actions, for proof that someone's intentions were true. While little is publicly shared about her private relationships, what is clear is that she valued love built on respect. She dreamed of one day having a family of her own, creating a home filled with stability and peace, something she longed to experience and provide. Friends often recall her talking about the future, the type of partner she wanted, and the kind of mother she hoped to be outside of family and romance. Her community ties were strong. Neighbors and peers admired her for her approachable spirit. She could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with friends. She had that gift, a natural ability to connect. Many say this was because she lived by a simple principle: treat people how you would want to be treated. That was how Dakara built her relationships, and that is why her absence now feels so profound. She wasn't just a daughter, sister, or friend. She was a soul people leaned on. And without her, that space will never quite be the same. It began like so many tragedies do, with an ordinary day that gave no warning of the darkness ahead. On the surface, nothing seemed unusual. Dakara's family and friends went about their routines, never imagining that within hours, their world would tilt into chaos. It was late summer in Prince George's County, the kind of time when life feels both busy and hopeful. But for Dakara, those days would become her last moments of freedom. Her disappearance unfolded quietly at first, just a few unanswered calls, a message left on read, a sudden silence that felt out of character. Dakara wasn't the type to vanish without a word. She was responsible. She checked in, she kept her family informed, so when the hours stretched into a full day without hearing from her, alarm bells began to ring. Her loved ones reached out to everyone they could think of, friends, neighbors, acquaintances, asking if anyone had seen or spoken to her, but no one had, and the pit of worry grew deeper. The search for her quickly turned desperate. Flyers were printed, social media posts shared, local groups rallied together, families and strangers alike joined in the effort, walking neighborhoods, checking abandoned lots, and contacting authorities with any possible lead. For 2 long weeks, hope and fear lived side by side. Her family clung to the possibility that she was safe somewhere. But each passing day without answers brought a heavier weight. It was as though the community itself held its breath, waiting, praying the crime scene that would eventually confirm their worst fears was not immediate or obvious. Her disappearance stretched across days of torment before the truth emerged. And when investigators finally connected the dots, they uncovered not just a case of a missing young woman, but the chilling reality of a life taken far too soon. Dakara's story shifted from one of hope for her return to one of justice for her death, and the community that had prayed for her safe arrival now found itself mourning the brutal crime that had cut her future short the moment the news broke. The world seemed to collapse for Dakara's family. For 2 weeks they had lived in the cruel space between hope and dread, praying that maybe she would come home, that maybe she was just lost, confused, or in need of time. But when authorities confirmed what they feared most, the finality of death hit like a storm. Her parents, siblings, and extended family were shattered. Their worst nightmare had become reality. Her mother described the pain as unbearable, a wound that could never heal. She spoke of how she kept replaying the last time she saw her daughter, her smile, her laugh, the small details that now felt like treasures but also like knives twisting in her chest. Her father, trying to hold the family together, struggled to find words to express the anger and sorrow that consumed him. To him, Dakara was not just a daughter but a light, a piece of his heart, stolen in a way no parent should ever have to endure. Siblings and cousins remembered her as the one who kept family gatherings lively, the one who always cracked jokes, who always asked if everyone had eaten. Her absence left a silence that was deafening. Family members spoke openly about the injustice of it all, the sheer senselessness of a young woman with so much promise being taken by violence. Some described it as living a nightmare with their eyes wide open, unable to wake up. Through tears, They shared memories not of her death, but of her life, her ambitions, her kindness, her laughter, because that was what they wanted the world to remember, not just the horror of how she died, but the beauty of how she lived. Still, even in their grief, there was a fire burning, a demand for justice. They vowed not to let Dakara's name fade into another statistic. They wanted her story told, her killer held accountable, and her legacy protected. For them, the loss was not just personal. It was a call to fight for answers, for truth, and for a measure of peace that may never fully come. When Dakara was first reported missing, investigators treated it as they would any disappearance of a young adult. Every hour mattered. Detectives began with the basics, tracking her phone records, reviewing surveillance footage in the areas she was last seen, and interviewing family and friends who might provide a clue, but the initial days brought little progress. She had seemed to vanish without leaving behind the usual digital footprints that might help trace her steps. For law enforcement, this silence was alarming. Detectives widened their search, canvassing neighborhoods, retracing possible routes she might have taken, and requesting the public's help. Tip lines lit up. Some callers swore they spotted someone who looked like Dakara. Others provided vague information, but none of it led to her. As days turned into a week, frustration grew both in the investigation and within her family. The longer she remained missing, the more dangerous the situation appeared. Behind the scenes, investigators were also quietly looking at the people in her life. Those closest to her were asked hard questions. Who was she spending time with? Did she have conflicts? Had she confided in anyone about feeling unsafe? Law enforcement knew from experience that disappearances were rarely random. Often the answers lay within the victim's circle, so every relationship Dakara had was examined under a microscope. Eventually, a break came when information pointed to a man named Hugo Hernandez Mendez, someone whose name hadn't appeared in the early stages but quickly became the focus of police attention. Details about his connection to Dakara were carefully pieced together, and the deeper detectives dug, the clearer it became that he was more than just a passing acquaintance. Suddenly, the investigation shifted from searching for a missing person to building a case around a possible suspect. The question was no longer just where Dakara was, but what exactly had happened to her. The turning point in the investigation came when detectives publicly identified a suspect, Hugo Hernandez Mendez. At just 20 years old, his name sent shockwaves through the community, because until then, very few outside the case had ever heard of him. He wasn't a longtime friend or someone deeply woven into Dakara's life. But as investigators uncovered, he had crossed her path in ways that would prove deadly. At first, police kept their details limited, citing the sensitivity of the case. But what was revealed was enough to shake everyone. Hugo was described as a young man with a troubling background, someone who had already brushed up against the law before. Records showed patterns of instability and violence that painted him as volatile, not just an ordinary youth who made mistakes, but someone capable of crossing dangerous lines. For the people who knew Dakara, it was devastating to learn that she had somehow encountered him. Because her nature was not one to seek trouble, the idea that she could fall victim to someone like him felt unbearably cruel. What investigators eventually confirmed was that Hugo was the last known person to have been with Dakara before she vanished, and that thread quickly unraveled into something far more sinister. His behavior in the days after her disappearance raised red flags, inconsistencies in his statements, gaps in his timeline, and a demeanor that suggested he was hiding something. As detectives pieced the puzzle together, suspicion hardened into evidence, and evidence into an arrest. By the time police charged Hugo Hernandez Mendez with murder, the narrative had shifted from mystery to betrayal. A young woman stolen, and a young man now standing accused of one of the gravest crimes imaginable. The one question that lingers, louder than all others, is why? What could possibly drive a 20-year-old man to take the life of a bright 19-year-old woman with her whole future ahead of her? Authorities have not released a full motive, leaving both family and the public to wrestle with the unbearable silence.
U.S. Government has made status of individuals relevant. This was someone who was in their custody, and they made the decision to release him. So I think the questions should be asked of the Justice Department.
It is the kind of case that feels senseless. No explanation could ever fill the void Dakara's death has left behind. Still, investigators hint that the answers may lie in the days leading up to her disappearance, in interactions that no one could have predicted would end in violence. It is this mystery, the unknown reason behind the crime, that deepens the tragedy, making her loss not only heartbreaking, but profoundly disturbing. As of now, Hugo Hernandez Mendez stands charged with murder. He has not yet faced trial, and the courts will ultimately determine his fate. For Dakara's family, the legal process will be another long and painful journey, one that forces them to relive the horror in search of justice. Every update from the courthouse will matter. Every hearing will hold weight. And though the path through the justice system can be slow, what remains certain is that Dacara Thompson's name will not be forgotten. Whether the verdict comes months or years from now, the hope is that her story will end not only with accountability, but with a legacy that continues to speak louder than the crime that tried to silence her. Dacara Thompson's name will forever be remembered, not just for the tragic way her life ended, but for the light she carried while she was here. Her family and friends have already begun honoring her memory, gathering together in vigils, sharing her photos and laughter on social media, and vowing that her story will never be silenced. Every tribute paints the same picture of a young woman full of warmth, potential, and love. Her family speaks often of her dreams, of the future she was building, and of the hole her absence has left in their lives. Though her life was short, her impact was deep. And that impact is what they now hold on to as they navigate the painful road ahead. In every candle lit and every prayer whispered, they are keeping Dakara alive in spirit. This story is a reminder of how fragile life can be. Dakara's disappearance and murder have shaken an entire community, forcing all of us to reflect on the reality of violence and the silent dangers that can lurk in unexpected places. Her death is not just a statistic. It is a wound, a wake-up call, and a reason for us to come together in awareness and compassion. Let us remember Dakara for who she was, a daughter, a friend, a dreamer, and not just for the tragedy that cut her life short. As you watch this, we invite you to leave your thoughts in the comments, share how this story has touched you, and most importantly, keep Dakara's family in your prayers. This is the Untold Crime Chronicles, and we ask you to please subscribe, help us reach 1,000 subscribers, and continue supporting stories that give voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves.